Okay, good afternoon. The other day we had a power outage. As most of the people that live here know, power was out for nearly 5 hours, and had to get the generator out, hook it all up, power it up. We were the only house on the block that had the lights on. All the neighbors out in the street with nothing to do, scratching their butt and wishing they had power, and we were the only ones that were lit because we have a generator system. But I did come to realize at that time that I had not given anyone a video or a written pathway of how to do this. So if I'm unavailable, people are just not gonna be able to get it done, or you're gonna have to struggle through it. So I'm gonna do a video how to do all this. So we're gonna start with the generator, because that's obviously where you're gonna start this process. So first you get the generator out of storage. Now this is the one that we have here at our house. It's a 10,000 watt, plenty of power for this house. I typically do not store anything with gas in it, because if you put it in storage, I don't care if it's a lawnmower, a garden tiller, what it is, nothing gets stored with gas in it. Not in the tank, and not in the carburetor, not in the fuel line. So what I do on everything is I have petcocks on everything. Either it came with a petcock, or I put one on it so that I could shut the petcock off and let the carburetor run itself out of gas, suck all the gas out of the lines in the carburetor bowl, and there's completely dry. And then I drain any fuel left in the tanks, then put the item away from storage. So your first step is going to be to put some gas in the generator. And I would just put maybe a quart, half a gallon, because if you can't get this running and going, then put everything up and just go sit in the front porch and sweat. Because if you can't get this running, the rest of this is a waste of time. So I put just a little bit of gas in here, get the unit up and running, make sure everything's okay, and then move forward hooking it up. Now I've already put some gas in here, so you don't get to watch me pour gas in here. I've already put some in here. So the way you do this, first get it out of storage, put a little bit of gas in it to start it, and you come around here. This is the choke. Pull the choke out. Pull the choke out. Turn on the fuel, which it's already on. So you turn on the fuel. See, this is the petcock I spoke of. And whenever we shut this down, and I mean shut it down, you're through using it, power's back on, you turn this off, let it keep running. It'll consume all the gas that's in the carburetor and the fuel lines, and then you can unhook this line and drain any remaining gas out of the tank, put it away for storage. So anyway, we got the choke pulled out. So now we're going to start it. This is a key start. There is a battery. Every time I test it, I take it out and test it once a year. The battery's always been up. If you put it in storage and don't test it and go 3 or 4 years, the battery's probably going to be dead. But I don't go less than a year before pulling it out, run it an hour, let it charge. So it's ready to go. So we're going to start it up. Now I'm going to start it, and it'll be noisy, so we'll shut it down and then continue the conversation. That's starting it. So the idle control, you can leave it on or off, your choice. I typically turn it on if it's going to idle for a little bit while I'm getting things set up. But once it starts running, you're beyond the idle RPMs, and that's no longer an issue. This is the plug you use to connect to the house. I've made up a cord. It's 50 foot long. This cord plugs in right here. You can't get it wrong. You can see that it's clearly keyed by the ground, which will only go in one way. After you get this hooked up, then you have to switch this to 240. So you switch this switch to 240 and you're good to go. Now in a minute we're going to do the breaker box and all the connections over there. But after this is the last thing you do. The generator is running, you plug this in, you switch this here, and you go back to the breaker box. So keep that in mind. So now we're going to the breaker box. Once again, I've made all this is matched amperage for this setup. So this goes in here, same thing. You can see it's keyed. One is flat, the others are keyed. So it will only go in one way. You plug this in, give it just a little bit of a turn to twist lock it in, and you're good to go. I keep the cord, it's 50 foot long, I keep it in this bucket, usually stored near the generator. Okay, now we're just going to talk about, here's where you plug it in. Power comes in here, through this control module, then back to the breaker box. I'll talk about this in just a minute. Okay, now we're at the breaker box. Now let's keep in mind, power's out. Everything's dead. No power from the grid. So turn every single breaker off. All the breakers are to the center of the panel. That means they're on. Every breaker goes this way to turn off. Turn off every single breaker. Turn this one off. This is the most important part. This connects you to the power grid. Turn this off. This is the generator interlock system, and these are unique to the type of panel you have. This one is made for this panel. If you have a Square D, it may be somewhat different. If you have a Siemens, it may be somewhat different. This is a Cutler hammer. This one's for Cutler hammer. So if you're gonna buy one of these and do your house, you have to buy one that's made for your panel. This is extremely important. If you don't have that on there and you're running on generator, you're back feeding power back to the power lines, back to the grid, to your neighbor's house, possibly getting someone hurt or killed. That's illegal to do this without that on there. Now some people use a transfer switch which replaces that. Some people use an interlock. So you just need to make sure that you've got it legal per NEC code, electrical code. But like I said, you turn everything off. Turn this off. Once you've turned this one off, then you can raise this plate up. And after you raise this plate up, that will let you turn this breaker on. This breaker connects you to the generator. And it's clearly marked here, interlock device must be up before turning breaker on. So this is the breaker that will energize this panel. So once the generator's running, you've made all your connections, flip this breaker on, the plate is up, then you can select which ones you want to turn in or turn on. Now, that generator will produce at 10,000 watts, I've done the math, it's about 80, maybe 82, 83 amps is what it'll produce, which is more than enough to run this house in the normal fashion, because this is a 200 amp panel, but you do not run all 200 amps. You don't have everything in the house turned on, every appliance running, cook stove, dryer, everything running at the same time, so you never use 200 amps. So typically a generator such as we have here will run this house. You just have to pick and choose, like, don't run the electric heat whenever you're running the dryer. Don't run the dryer while you're running the cook stove. So you have to pick and choose what you're going to run, by turning the breakers off and on. So once you get generators hooked up and you've done this, then you can pick and choose what you're going to turn back on. Then you're going to see right here, this is a monitoring device that, now don't go around to Lowe's and Home Depot and think you're going to find that on the shelf. It's not there. I bought the components, researched it, and I built this. I made it. So what this does, I'm going to flip it on. You'll see what this does is it monitors the voltage. The green is the amps. So while you're running, what's happening is this bus bar over here is this one here is the bus bar over here. So it's going to tell you how many amps are being used here and here. And you have to look at that and just do the math. If this says 20 and this says 10, then you're consuming 30 amps, and vice versa. If this says 20 and this says 12, obviously you're pulling 32 amps. You're combined totally. And so what I did this for is so that very purpose. You can come out here and look and say, hey, I'm doing great. I've got 80 amps available. I'm only using 65. We're good to go. Or if you look at it and you're up at 76 amps, you can say, crap, I'm gonna have to turn something off before we start tripping breakers. So that's what this is for. So I'm gonna turn it back off. And this switch only controls this panel. It doesn't have anything to do with the energy going to here. It just controls that panel. And like I said, I made that. If you need to know more about it, I can help you get there, tell you what I did. But I made this solely for that purpose, so I can monitor and keep track of my amperage coming into the house per bus bar. You have a bus bar here, the bus bar here. So that pretty much gets you up and running. Turn on your lights, sit on the front porch and sip iced tea and giggle and laugh at the neighbors who are sitting in the dark, and you're good to go. And obviously, when you see your neighbor lights start coming on, then you'll know grid's back up. You can put it back service, but you have to reverse the process. You have to once again come back out here. This is the last thing you turn back on. You have to shut down your generator, disconnect your cable, the one that I showed you, turn all these off, and the last thing you put back in service is this, and that assumes the power grid is back on. You see your neighbors all got power, well, you turn it back on, you'll have power. You cannot energize this panel to the grid while you're on generator power. It's gonna be a big problem and you're gonna get somebody hurt. Do not do it. Last thing, disclaimer, you've got to do it right. If you're uncomfortable with doing it yourself, you need to hire an electrician to do it. You need to be knowledgeable about this kind of equipment, this kind of stuff. You can get hurt. You can get in a lot of trouble if you don't know what you're doing. I'm not responsible for you making mistakes. If you choose to do your own, whether you do in your house or whatever you're doing, if you do it wrong, it's on you. I'm not responsible. That's your little disclaimer. I'm not responsible for your mistakes. This is just an information video of what I've done here, the generator we use, and how we hook it up and connect it. All total, it takes me about 10 or 15 minutes. The other night, power went out. I think less than about 10 to 12 minutes, we were up and running, lights were back on. So that's how long it took it to get going. So I think that's pretty much covers everything. That's the end of the video. I hope you never need it.